Hey class, we are now going to begin lecture 6 for church history. I have a couple of topics that I want to overview today for you to help you with your reading and papers for this week. The first topic we're going to talk about is pietism. The second is the Enlightenment. And then finally we're going to end things with talking a little bit about the Great Awakening. So, as we ended last lecture, we talked about the religious wars in Europe and the aftermath of that. Another side of that equation, as we said before, was also like rationalists, discounting religion because of the wars. Another response to that was pietism, particularly in Germany as kind of a off-cropping of Lutheranism. One of the biggest guys that you should know about in this movement is Philip Jakob Spener, who wrote a book translated to be called Pious Desires. And if you read the book, it's only like 100 pages. You'll feel like it's kind of a glorified like devotional book, like how a small group should be run, how prayer meetings should be run. It puts a lot of emphasis on the church, on the laity, and on the individuals. As we talked about in our discussion board for the Reformation, from that point on, there's a continuing push towards the individual and towards democracy. Pietism at this point is a pretty big deal in terms of giving the laity more responsibility and more of a voice. So that's also a connector point, pietism is, between the Reformation and the Great Awakening, specifically Wesleyanism, but we can talk about that more later. The Enlightenment. This also jumps on the idea that we've been talking about with the discussion board from the Reformation of a push towards the individual and the authority of the individual over the authority of the church and the king. You're going to read a lot of different philosophers, Locke, Kant, just to name a few. Some of them are more towards Christianity. Some of them are against it. They all have something important to say. So don't discount them just because they aren't particularly interested in theology. With the Enlightenment, we are moving towards a more scientific culture, a more philosophical culture, and we're pushing away from the all-powerful influence of the church and of the state. The Enlightenment is a really good thing, but there's also really bad things about it too. So as you're reading through the chapters on those, try and find the pros and cons of that movement. Because we definitely, if the Enlightenment hadn't happened, our culture would not be the same as it is today. Finally, I want to end on the Great Awakenings, particularly in America, and this also, of course, touches on the discussion board for the Reformation, the push towards democracy, the push towards the individual, and the right to choose what you want, specifically in religion, but also, in what your government looks like and things like that. This is another reason why the Great Awakenings aren't as big of a deal in Europe as they are in America, because Europe doesn't have as much of a democratic feel about it at this period, whereas America does. And an example of this is when the Great Awakening happens, and the Second Great Awakening as well, it hits the old congregations in America hard. What I mean by that is, before the Great Awakenings, you had parishes, whether they were Protestant or Catholic. And, a Lutheran church would be in this town, and they would have a parish boundary. And everyone in that area would, be effectively told, okay, this is your church, go to this church, pay tithes to this church, support this church, that kind of thing. The Great Awakening circumvents that. You have revivalists and itinerant preachers going around the country and just saying, what's a parish boundary? I don't care. I'm just going to preach wherever I want. And this gets the old leadership of the churches really angry because they're just totally disregarding the social way that church should be done. And that's another reason why it's so popular, because these guys like George Whitefield, like Jonathan Wesley, are just like, okay, well, we'll just go straight to the people. We don't specifically need your church hierarchy to make this thing work. And the people respond. They vote with their feet. This is a foreshadowing of why the American Revolution worked, because democracy begins to take a root in America. Whether you like that or not, it's just a historical fact. People, like leaders, are now specifically trying to appeal to the masses rather than appeal to the leaders. You can see that in specifically guys like Whitefield, who wrote before he would go to a town to have a revival. He would take out ads in newspapers, and he would send pamphlets, and he would say, "I'm coming. This is where I'm going. Meet me here. We're going to have this revival." And it would be very specifically pointed towards the laity. So that's kind of our 3 topics for this lecture. Once again, we covered the Pietists. We briefly touched on the Enlightenment, and then I kind of got on a tangent with the Great Awakenings, because that is just a really interesting topic that you could talk about for hours and hours and hours, but obviously we don't have the time. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I'd love to help. Good luck with your Edwards paper, and I look forward to reading them. Thanks.